The next story I want to cover is also from the Boston Globe. So we've got just a lot of sort of insanity going on in Massachusetts. This story is talking about the Zoom police. The Zoom police. So the crux of this is, well, we all know, right? We've all been under quarantine orders for the last many, many, many months, depending on where you're living. That is now trickling down into the educational systems. So our schools are really not happening. Many schools have tried to make adjustments. They're doing these Zoom classes and they're trying to figure it out. But what happens if your students don't figure it out? What happens if your kids don't get on their Zoom class? They're 6 years old. They don't want to sit in a computer for 4 hours a day. They can't do that. That's insanity, right? So they don't show up to class. What happens if you're a single mom? I was raised by a single mom. She had 3 boys, worked full time. Would she be able to sort of corral us to sit us in front of a Zoom meeting? No way. I couldn't do 4 hours on a Zoom meeting right now. I'd go crazy. So what happens if your kids don't show up? Well, it's not good. The government gets involved, you see. Massachusetts school officials have reported dozens of families to state social workers for possible neglect charges because of issues related to their children's participation in remote learning classes during the pandemic shutdown in the spring, according to interviews. So what's happening is these parents, they're doing other things and the kids can't get on the Zoom call. So other people, the teachers and other people in the know are reporting them. Massachusetts school officials have reported, the school officials themselves are reporting these people to the DCAF, which is basically the Child Services Department out of Massachusetts. So they've reported dozens of families to state social workers for possible neglect charges because of issues relating to the performance of participation in remote learning. In most cases, the referrals were made solely because students failed to log into classes repeatedly. Most of the parents were mothers, and several did not have any previous involvement with social services. So this is one of those situations you're just, what? So the government is now stepping in and saying because your kid's not logging onto Zoom, that is something that basically justifies them taking your kid away. Did you understand how serious that charge is? Child neglect means you're an unfit parent. If you're an unfit parent, they take your kid away from you. They just take them because you're neglecting them. Right? Most of the time, these situations are if a parent is a severe addict and the kid is living in squalor or something like that. This is not because a kid didn't go to school. If you remember, there's a lot of issues about this surrounding Kamala Harris, who also was prosecuting people for truancy. And the reason why this is so troubling is because essentially there is a huge portion of the world in the population. And I grew up in a family like this with a single mom with 3 boys with very limited resources, extremely poor, and any sort of involvement from the government would have been catastrophic. My mom did an excellent job, did the best she can, but we went to, we didn't have it very easy. And so if one of the teachers would have called her and said, hey, your kid didn't show up for this or show up for that, by the way, we're going to send Department of Child Protective Services over to your residence, and we're going to investigate everything, and we're potentially going to take your kid away if we find that you're being neglectful. That's insane to me. I mean, I don't think that that's justified at all. What happens if a parent just says, I've got alternative arrangements. I'm going to have my child be educated by my mother-in-law or my mother or my brother or my family, or we're going to do a community education system or whatever that looks like. But instead, the government shows up and they're starting to charge people with neglect for kids not showing up to school. So the woman that this happened to, Keeles, said that she told staff at Hurd Street Discovery Academy that her work schedule made it tough to assist in virtual schooling. She struggled to navigate the school's online platforms, and they didn't offer any help. Then in June, she received a call from the State Department, and they said that she was being accused of neglect because her 7-year-old missed class and homework assignments. She said she couldn't believe it. She said it was one of the worst nightmares for a parent. A neglect charge, if substantiated, can lead to removing a child from their home. It came during a period of unprecedented educational disruption in which parents, students, and schools all struggle with ad hoc routines. and challenged even the most engaged, but would be the result will result in some being singled out for how their child responded. School staff are required to notify. The staff has to notify when they have reasonable cause to believe that a child has been abused or neglected. Is not showing up to school abuse or neglect? You can be the judge of that. As I said, most of these neglect cases, kids are malnourished, kids are in drug-addicted homes. They're in a situation that is unhealthy for them. They experience domestic violence or something worse than that. But it's not somebody doesn't go to school. That's a whole different category. Now, you may want to think that, because of your living situation, that amounts to neglect. I certainly don't think so. There are many ways to educate a child. There are many different resources. Now, I will tell you this. I don't have any kids, and I don't have yet, and I don't have anybody in school. I'm not super invested in the educational issue, but I do think that when we start seeing government encroaching on stuff that should be reserved to be dealt with in the family, that is a big problem. The idea that the government's going to come in and basically take somebody's kid away because they're not showing up to Zoom meetings. The article goes on a little bit. Apparently the schools were helping them get laptops and get logged on to things. But, many homes don't even have the internet. I've had people who watch the show call the office and say, hey, I go over to my friend's house and I watch the show at my friend's house because I don't have the internet at my place. Keep it up. In other words, that's my point. It's, we live in 2020. We all think we have the basic necessities. We all think that we have iPhones and iPads and laptops and internet everywhere we go and Wi-Fi and 5G, but there are many people in this country that just don't. And they are going to be the ones that are hit hardest by these stupid policies trying to have the government educate your kids, having the government tell you how to run your household. Maybe the mom doesn't want her kid logging onto Zoom at 8 a.m. Maybe that's just not what they want because she's working and the kid's doing something else and school's going to happen at 5 p.m. Whatever it is, the fact that they're being threatened to have their kids taken away is insanity to me, and I hope to not see any more of this. But this did come out of the Boston Globe. There are a lot of people who are kind of up in arms about this thing, as they should be. In Lynn, for example, 2 parents were reported to DCF for their child's absence from online learning. They did not receive information about getting laptops. They did not have internet access because they do not use Facebook and email. So they just even simply couldn't communicate with the schools. There's just no conversations happening. There's a back and forth going on. The school superintendent is saying, oh no, her story's totally inaccurate. We didn't file anything. We only do that in rare situations. But Keeley says, no, it didn't take long. The state social worker during the initial call said that the complaint had no merit, but she still had to deal with it. So fortunately, she's not going to lose her kids. But at some point, maybe somebody will, because some bureaucrat in some department of child whatever got a report that you're not a good parent. Scary as hell to me. I mean, if I'm in that position and I do have kids, that is going to be a difficult situation to deal with.